it was a lot of new things and kind of a different type of work than I think I was used to, maybe the other people were used to, but didn't feel like it, you know? You could observe a lot and do stuff and actually like use your hands to make things. And I absolutely loved that part.
I think design is an important way to make things more accessible and to make things easier to approach and understand, and I think this was a great class.
And I mean, I'm a creative person to begin with, and just tapping into that, and it was a remarkable experience.
And so Library Test Kitchen came to be a part of a broader conversation about the future of education and training in library and information science within the fold of the IMLS grant that has brought together a series of the leading library schools. So the idea of offering a version of Library Test Kitchen, this time not in an architecture school, but instead in an actual library and information science school, came as a natural extension of those conversations. And during the summer of 2016, my colleague Jessica Yurkovsky led the first version of Library Test Kitchen, specifically designed for students in library and information science programs.
I first got involved in Library Test Kitchen when I was a grad student at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. Was in the urban planning program there, and I was a student in Library Test Kitchen. Jeff and Jeffrey were teaching it, and then I sort of stayed involved ever since. I co-taught a couple more classes at the GSD with Jeff and Jeffrey and Matthew, and then taught the course this summer at Simmons.
I think what I would suggest is that people take it easy and playfully. That you don't have to transform your institution, your workplace, your life in one fell swoop with design. You can apply the concepts, the principles, the methodology of design to a very small piece of your life. Indeed, that's really the best way forward. Take a problem that you're encountering, come up with a bunch of crazy solutions to the problem, and then prototype a few of those, sketch them out, see what works and what doesn't work, iterate on those sketches, and really apply it to something very, very small, and then see what you can do to grow it from there. So starting small and approaching it playfully is the advice that I would give.
Innovation, we live in a really big world, and so innovation is kind of like a branch, or new creativity is kind of like a branch or a tree or something, but you're going to start on a thicker part where lots of people have been, and it's going to get thinner and branch further out and stuff. It's when so initially you're going to be on a path that lots of people have been on. You're going to take another change, there'll be fewer people, another decision, there are fewer people, to the point at which eventually you'll get into new terrain. And then maybe that's where the new idea comes and you start a whole new thing that's actually quite unique and different, or it's a modification of an existing idea. Nonetheless, it takes a long time. You have to push one idea far enough to get into a sort of fresh space with it.
I think a really useful, I think one of the problems when you're talking about design and design in libraries is it's kind of way up here, and unless you really ground it, people don't know how it might apply to them. I think it can be really difficult to make it concrete. I like to talk about the former New York City Transportation Commissioner, Jinnah Sadi Khan, who totally transformed New York's streets and created all the bike lanes and pedestrian-only spots in Times Square. And she's a really great book called Street Fight, which I think is captures a lot of what design thinking is about in a really tangible way and one that's aware of and limited by bureaucracy and kind of institutional constraints and how you can work around those. So she talks about projects as pilots and sort of how can you pose something as a pilot, something that you can do really quickly. You don't have to repave Times Square, you can just put up some cones and put out a bunch of beach chairs, and that's a way of testing something really quickly. So I think kind of posing, how do you translate a problem into something that you can just, something tangible that you can test, and then work from that, and hopefully do that, multiple times over the course of the semester, but maybe you only get to do that 2 or 3 times or 1 time. But how can you learn as much as possible each time you do that?
Here's the difference between the way the students would approach projects in other classes and the way projects and concepts were approached in this class. In other classes, you're encouraged to think of new ideas and think outside the box, realizing that you have constraints that you have to deal with, and they are budgetary, they relate to intellectual property, they relate to technical capability, they relate to feasibility in a particular institution. There are a lot of things that constrain how out of the box you can think in most life situations in libraries and in most courses as a result. Here, I think the difference was there was no box. There was no think outside the box. It's like imagine the box, or don't even think about the box. Don't worry about anything. What would you like to do? Don't concern yourself with whether it's possible or not. We're not going to worry about whether this can be done. We want to know, what do you think would be the best thing to do, or the most interesting thing to do, or the thing that would be the best way to approach this particular problem, regardless of any of the normal constraints you have to worry about. And that's an incredibly freeing and unusual thing. So in a way, it was a real luxury to take or to be in a course like this, where you could not have to worry about the kinds of things you normally have to think about when you're planning a project or presenting an idea. So I think the students would agree that that was a very refreshing way to approach the kinds of things they were interested in doing.
I feel like it kind of answers the question of why I'm doing this degree of what could a library of the future that actually appeals to people be, and I don't know, that was the whole question that I wanted to answer with all the classes that I took, of what is going to make people care about the library and want to come to the library. And so it was a really cool opportunity to explore some of those ideas. And the design was hard for me. It's not something that I was comfortable with or felt like I necessarily knew how to do it, but I was so happy with how my end project turned out that, I don't know, it was a cool challenge.
And because this class is pushing that direction of, yeah, you can do that. Let's figure out how. Let's take this idea and break it down and do all these things. And it was extremely helpful. And you can apply it to so many things, not just in libraries, not just design, it's just kind of everywhere. So I loved that.